Hello and welcome to NewFilmmakers Los Angeles. We are from Los Angeles to Toronto right now with the incredible team, both in front and behind camera of Receiver. Hello, everybody. I'm sorry we can't do this in person.
Hey, Danny.
Bye.
But for those that haven't seen Receiver, let's take a look at the clip.
211, this is Sriani. How can I help you?
Oh, hello there, Sriani.
Hello. What can I do for you today?
It's me. It's Drake. Do you hear me?
Oh, yes, of course. Hi, Drake. Didn't expect to hear from you. How are you doing? Okay?
Of course. I called back a bunch of times tonight. Kept getting random dudes. It would be easier if you just give me your number.
I'm delighted to have you all here. It's really, really fantastic. And thank you so much for bringing your film to NewFilmmakers LA. I and my partner were mesmerized by the performance, by the film, by just this unbelievable story I've never seen before. But for those that haven't seen it, it might be for you, Cavan, or Luke, tell us a brief synopsis of your film.
Go for it, Cavan.
Sure. Okay, thank you. So Receiver is a chamber horror film that follows Sriani, an idealistic and overtaxed Sri Lankan Canadian social worker at a telephone helpline. Sriani has built her whole life around an overabundance of empathy and service to others, but has done so pretty consistently at the expense of her own needs and desires and those of the people closest to her. So the film asks the question, well, who's going to defend Sriani tonight then when she's confronted by an insidious caller with the power to control her mind?
Why would you not want to watch this film? Like, it's so intriguing, just even with the synopsis, like, honestly. Well, I'm curious because I just love the minds, the imagination that you have for this film. Tell us a little bit about where the inspiration came for the story, and then we'll come on to your fantastic lead in this film as well in a second.
Yeah, so sort of the core inspiration of Receiver was my former girlfriend at the time that Luke and I were conceiving of the project. My girlfriend at the time, who is a social worker, was working at a telephone helpline, and I got the chance to see through her experiences the level of emotional labor that is demanded of a woman in that kind of workplace, and the level of empathy that it demands as well. Because the thing is, empathy is sort of the main bedrock of the modern social work industry. And there's a huge amount of demands put on social workers of all sorts by both their employers and managers and also their clients. And the more Luke and I started to talk about those issues, I mean, the more it sort of started to scare us, in the sense that, you know, we thought more and more about how empathy is commoditized in a workplace like this. And the thing is, when you commodify somebody's empathy, you really open the door to abuse their empathy and to abuse the investment of themselves that they make in doing the job. And so when we had latched onto that as an exciting idea going forward, and sort of the genre of the film was suggesting itself, then it came time to figure out a good operating metaphor for how to get this across. And then the concept of the hypnotic seduction community sort of moved its way to the fore, and that became a lens to look at the way that women in society are just treated both personally and professionally.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because it's very important points, and it's also stuff that we should be talking about more as well. So I'm so glad that you shared that analysis of that. Now, I don't know where you found the lead star for your film, but I love this performance, like such a full-rounded performance. So before we reveal who our lead star is, tell us a little bit about the greatness of casting this particular film.
Well, we got really, really lucky. As you can imagine, even in a very, very multicultural and cosmopolitan city like Toronto, it still it's still tough knowing you're going into a process casting a South Asian actor and knowing that you don't have a lot of money to do so. The way that you go about casting has to be delicate, and you have to be willing to look in sort of every potential direction, because it's just a naturally smaller pool of talent than you will find if you are, if you're casting a generic white 20-something role. That's just the reality of how the demographics work. And so we had submissions that were being made from basically every major agency in the city for any of their South Asian actors that were the right age. And we got really, really lucky because the individual we ended up casting, we saw on the very first day. And I was elbowing Luke after she left saying, I'm pretty sure that's who I'm going to cast.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, we are lucky to be joined by the stars. I'm so mesmerized by your performance. Like, because we've never seen a role like this before, right? And you just gave it such a full rounded effect. Like, I just was like, I could have watched you the whole series just around this particular subject. It was so good. How was the experience for you in being part of this film?
Yeah, it was a really great a great opportunity. It was almost 2 years ago now that I think back on it, when we actually shot this pre-COVID, and it was really special to play a very kind of full-rounded South Asian character, and that is more than just kind of her origin story, and really past kind of those tropes and moving more into something very, very, psychological in nature. And in a way, when the show came out and all of this work from home became the reality of so many people, here you have this character who has already been working from home and dealing with so much of that work life and mentality and stress and emotional impact in their home space, which I think a lot of us can also relate to, in no longer having that separation from work and home, which we might be used to. So it became even more impactful, kind of the storytelling of what was there, and it was truly special to be able to play and discover Sriyani. And we did a lot over, I think, maybe 2.5 days shooting this.
Wow.
So it was a lot of intense work. It almost felt like we were doing a theatrical piece, in the sense of having learned the script and knowing everything from top to tail, and having been the only person on set in front of camera. My other actors, co-stars, they were off camera. But they were there while shooting, so it was really nice to have their presence delivering the lines, versus having someone call it in, or someone else reading the lines for them and then recording it later. It really helped to kind of, especially for Drake over the phone, and having him there, and that kind of interplay was really crucial, of having both actors kind of on set at the same time.
What was it like? Because it's like, this is such a unique role and a unique kind of experience, and just all the different layers that Cavan has said. How did you both work together? Like, what was there an improvisation? Was there play, like rehearsal? What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, so it was really nice that we had a couple rehearsal days before we went onto set, with some of the other cast members as well. And we kind of worked through the script, but then we also did some improvisation stuff, kind of discovering kind of the physicality of Sriyani, especially when it comes to where pain was centered in her body, and how that relates to everything that she physically does around the home, and how that is also used to manipulate her in both ways as well too, both the relief of it through Drake, and then the return of it through Sriyani. And it was helpful to have that grounding moment beforehand, especially with how thorough the process was, and how climactic we got to with shooting it the moment the switch happens, or when I had to switch roles, essentially.
Yeah.
I think having had done all that kind of preparatory work really helped in that transition moment, to really have understood how to move from the height of, you know, the fear of Shriani into this other character that kind of
Yeah, you play scary very well. I was like, oh my goodness, I should be watching this alone. Thankfully I wasn't, actually, because my partner was there. But and we're going to come back. I promise. I'm just trying to gather the great room we got here. Luke, I know you co-wrote this film as well. It's lovely to have you here. How was the experience? I mean, what is it like? Also, how was the experience with this project? But what's it like, kind of co-writing like a project together? Like, how does that work for you?
It was a new experience for me, and also a brand new genre for me. This is not at all my first attempt at anything horror related. But yeah, Cavan came to me with sort of the seed of the idea, and I was immediately really intrigued by it. And it was like, yeah, why not? Let's give it a shot and see how it goes.
Amazing, amazing. Now, obviously, you know, there's always challenges in independent filmmaking, as we know. Was there any challenges in making this project, or was it just plain sailing easy?
No, there's a lot of challenges, most of them on Cavan and Tahirih's back. But the biggest one, I would say, on my end was that when we wrote the film originally, we had a script that ended up around 30 pages, and we were really happy with it, and also very aware that 30 pages was too long to make a short out of. And we really had to work to get it down to a manageable length while maintaining the sort of the atmosphere and the details, the nuances that made us like the script in the first place. And I'd say that was probably the biggest challenge from my end before I handed it off to Cavan, who had to execute the thing.
Yeah, Cavan, anything to add there?
I should probably mention that that it was also really helpful, I think, in the writing room between Luke and I, knowing that he was also going to be working as my picture editor on the film as well. So I think that gave I think a really useful level of interplay to how we structured, especially cutting down the film so significantly. Although ironically enough, for a picture editor, he was fighting for a longer script, and I was the one saying, this is unfilmable, and I'm the director, we're making this shorter. Which I can tell you is the first experience of my life of having my picture editor say, no, I think this can be longer. I think this works longer.
That was writer me. Editor me disagreed later.
From a performance perspective here, what was the kind of experience like for you? Was there any kind of challenges that you faced? I mean, you had to change the dynamic of your character. So what was that experience like?
As I was mentioning earlier, that kind of that trajectory leading up to it, by the third day, that was really hard because of the very short amount of time that we had to get kind of the last few shots as the other character. I'm very thankful for my double who was there, Mina James, because she was kind of, as I was mentioning, like an anchor for me and someone that I could kind of, who understood both sides of the characters that I was also playing. And so having that presence there was very helpful for me to be able to transition very quickly from that heightened fear state into playing that very strong other character. The other challenges, I think maybe, you know, being the only person on set.
You carried the film,
absolutely. That was both exciting and challenging at the same time. I think, you know, having Cavan there as well too, who's really great to work with. We communicated really well together. And oftentimes he would say at the end, you know what, just go for it, and this is your take, and have fun with it, and a lot of kind of open space to do what I wanted to do as well too. So that was really nice.
Oh, I love that. Well, I mean, you might have a different perspective on this, and this is for everybody, but what did you kind of want your audience to take from your film? Apart from just scare us all with the dynamic.
Does somebody want to go first?
You should go, Cavan. Yeah.
Oh, how convenient. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, knowing what was underpinning this, there was a couple of important things that I wanted to get across to the audience. First of all, the thematic issues, as I've already described, about issues of how society treats women in the workplace, particularly within helper roles, was really important to get across. The other driving thing for me was specifically the idea of taking a genre piece like a chamber horror film and setting it, putting at the center of it a character unlike we've ever seen in that genre before, specifically a woman of color. That was a really personal choice for me because I'm Sri Lankan Canadian. And the thing was, for me, growing up in the 80s, hell, even now, Toronto is the largest diaspora of Sri Lankans anywhere in the world. Like, the largest collection of Sri Lankans you will find outside of Sri Lanka is in Toronto, and even here, in the midst of the most significant diaspora that Sri Lankans have, there is a complete dearth of portrayals of Sri Lankans and Sri Lankan Canadians on screen. And I know it was a really important push that I made when we first started working on the script, when I said to Luke, I think this is going to work really well as a vehicle for me to express a bit about my own thoughts about my history and some of my mom's experiences growing up as a woman of color in Canada in the 60s. And this felt like the right film to do it. It felt like thematically where we already knew we were going and what we were touching upon, with the idea of, hypnotic seduction community running up against, an empathic social worker. Mm-hmm. It seemed like a really good fit to then be able to say something about a character of my background, So
yeah.
I it's hard for me to say how much of that I ever expected the audience to pick up on directly. A lot of it, I think, was seeded like breadcrumbs through it because we didn't want to be really superficial and really obvious about it. I worked really hard with our great production designer, Jennifer Tam, to come up with a really authentic, but also very subtle way of populating images of Sri Lanka in Sri's apartment. We had said from the beginning, we're not putting a Sri Lankan flag on the wall or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to say how much of it I expected the audience to get, but it was always under the surface for me when we were working on the film.
Well, we don't deserve this platform unless we're going to show the world that live in it. And it was so refreshing. I have a great friend from Sri Lanka who wants to take me there. So I'm excited to go one day. But I was going to say, again, there's a huge community of Sri Lankan Canadians in Toronto, and we should be seeing more of the great multicultural community that exists, not just in Toronto, but every city in every country across the world. So is anyone else, from a performance standpoint, like, you gave so much to this character, is there anything you kind of felt like you wanted people to take from your words, or what's the reaction been like for you, actually?
I think one of the bigger things to take away from it was kind of the vulnerability of that character and how easy it was for them to be manipulated by someone over the phone, and because of the amount of empathy that they carry in these types of roles. It was funny. I had someone who had watched the film on the Air Canada flight, because it's playing on the onboard thing, and she messaged me on Facebook afterwards saying, I just watched you in Receiver on Air Canada and I could feel your back pain. Like, she was like, I've had that before, and I could, I felt everything that you were going through. Yeah. And so it's so interesting to hear what other people what threads that resonate with them, and aspects of the character, the things that character is coping with. Even the whole relationship story of why isn't she going to Elliot's birthday party, right? Like, what is also happening with this relationship, and how much is she sacrificing for this job and this work that she's doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've come from a family of women, and they have so much extra layers of empathy that just men just can't comprehend, to be fair, let's face it, right? And so I just felt like, it was just such a great story, just to show how hard, these amazing people work, and they've got lives too, and they've got things going on in their world. And I just love that dynamic, as well as scaring me. I love all of the dynamics, okay? I could just talk to you all for hours. I'm like, why are we not doing this in a beautiful restaurant having a glass of wine? But anyways, we're here. So I just want to close it up with just finding out what is next for you together or individually. Whoever wants to take that.
Well, Luke and I are in the process of developing a feature film based on Receiver.
Oh, great!
Yeah, hard to say with what the industry is like in Canada right now from a funding standpoint. It's hard to say when the project is going to get made. But yeah, that's definitely in the works. So that's what Luke and I have got going on together. And don't tell Tahirih I told you this, but I'm writing a separate horror film right now, and I'm pretty sure I'm writing the lead for her.
Oh, was that
alrighty then. Well then, yes, maybe I might have something coming up. That's.
I love it. I love it. Is there anything else that you're working on or wanting to go towards us aside from getting a role announced on the new Filmmakers platform?
I'm just trying to think what's coming up. I shot something, but I can't actually say what it is, so I can't announce anything.
So we got one exclusive. We're all good. We're all good. Don't worry. No, I'm just, again, thanks so much for such a wonderful all-rounded performance and great writing and team that you've got here to create this project. And I'm so glad that you're making a feature version because I really wanted more. So just thank you all so very much for bringing it to NewFilmmakers LA, and I just can't wait to see more of your projects. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having us, Danny.
Yeah.
Thank you.